What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to take a look at using Tanstack Table with Vue. Tanstack Table is headless UI that allows you to build powerful tables and data grids while retaining complete control over your markup and styles. The Tanstack is a set of open source libraries written by Tanner Lindsley and is most popular within the React ecosystem. However, over the last little while, these libraries have had major updates to them, making them framework agnostic and compatible with all major front-end frameworks. So previously, Tanstack Table was known as React Table, but as of version 8, it's now known as Tanstack Table and is compatible with Vue, which we'll be taking a look at in this video. Now, before we begin, it's important to understand that this is a headless component, meaning you have to provide the markup and the styles yourself. So the benefit of this is you have complete control over how everything looks, but it does require a bit of setting up to get working correctly. Now, if you were to use an existing solution from a UI library, say Material UI, that would be easier to set up, but you don't have complete control over how everything looks. Now, I'm personally going to use Tailwind for this demo, but you're free to write your CSS in any way you like, which is the main benefit of headless UI components. This library does offer a ton of functionality, but we'll be taking a look at the most common use cases, namely pagination, sorting, and filtering. So I have some boilerplate set up, which I will walk you through. It's just this table that shows here, which is styled with Tailwind. I have a Vue app scaffolded out with the CLI. You can see I'm just deferring to this table original component here. And within here, you can see I'm importing people from mock data. And you can find that here. This is just a representation of how your data comes back, say, for example, from an API endpoint or from your database. So again, just a list of people in JSON format. We have standard fields like ID, first name, last name, email, and so on. So let's go ahead and install Tanstack Table and see how we can make use of it. So first, I am going to duplicate this table original component and make a new one here. Let's name it Table Tanstack, just so you can see the difference when we're done. And that's fine for now, but within our parent component, let's use that one instead. So let's say Table Tanstack. Okay. And let's make use of that one instead. Let me just comment this one out. And we'll say Table Tanstack. And that should be the same in the browser, and it is. And let's take a look at the docs and install Tanstack Table. So you can see they have adapters for all of these frameworks. We're making use of Vue here. And let's go ahead and npm install Tanstack Vue Table. The docs aren't great at this time. It's just mostly a set of API documentation, but they do have examples down here, which is where I mostly learned from, and also a few other YouTube videos that did it in React. So let's go ahead and install this package. Let me stop vite npm install this. Okay, let's run vite again. And let's go back to our code and import what we need. So I'm in Tanstack Table. Let's import a few things from Tanstack Vue. So let's say import. We're going to need this composable called use Vue table. We need a flex render. And we need get core row model for now. Get core row model. And this is coming from at Tanstack Vue table. Okay. The next step is to create an instance of a Tanstack Vue table. So let's do that. Let's say const table equals use table or use Vue table. And this takes a set of options which has all of the information for our table. So for now, let's add the data. So data. And we already have this as we're importing it up here from our mock data people.json. But we need this to be a reactive piece of state. So we can either use ref or reactive. I'll stick with ref. So let's say const data equals ref. And let's just pass in the people we have here. So people. Okay. And towards the end of this video, you'll see how this component is reusable across different types of data. But for now, this is fine. So our data is going to be data.value because it's a ref. And we have to make sure to import ref here. Not sure why it's not showing here. So let me do it manually. So let's say import ref from Vue. Okay. Next, we also need our columns for our table. So say columns, and we'll make a variable here with our column data. And this doesn't have to be reactive. So we'll just say columns people for our people data. And we'll create that in a second. And one more thing here we need to render our table is get core row model. And that's get core row model as a method. So now we need to define our columns for this specific data type, in this case, people. So let's go ahead and do that. So say const columns people equals an array. And this will be an array of objects for all of our headers. So if we go into our mock data for people, it's basically all of these fields here. So ID, first name, last name, email, title, role, and created at. So again, the headers we have up here. Okay, so let me grab one object here so we can reference it. Let's go back to app view, or sorry, Tanstack, table Tanstack, and let's put that right here. And let me just comment this out. Okay. So again, these are our headers, and we need an accessor key. Let's say accessor key. So this is how you would refer to the table header programmatically. So sort of like an ID in your database. And we'll just stick to what we have in our JSON. So this will be first name. And the actual header, which appears on our table in our markup, will be header. And this will be first name. Okay. And we can do the same for the other fields. So let me grab this. Same thing for last name. So let's get rid of this. This will be last name. And let me just paste in the rest of them. Okay, so I pasted in the rest of the headers. And this last one here corresponds to this one, which has no header. So I just named it edit, and the header is an empty string. We now have our table instance. We have our columns. So now it's time to replace our headers in our rendered table. So right here, let's replace this thead, or the contents of thead, with our table instance and our columns, or our headers at least. So currently we're just hard coding the different headers here. So we have first name, last name, and so on. And that's what's showing here. But now we have this within our columns array, within our table instance. So let's go ahead and replace this. So I'm going to comment out what we have here currently. So let's comment this out. And let's make our own. So again, we have thead. And now we have to loop through our table rows and our table heads, or THs. So for this one, we just have one tr, but you can actually have multiple rows within a table head. So let's go ahead and do that. So say tr. We have to loop over our TRs in our table head. So we can say v4 header group in table.get header groups. And let's say key equals header group dot ID. Okay. And then now we have our THs, which we have to loop over as well. Again, this is part of the setup that's involved to get our table rendering. So just bear with me for now while we go through this boilerplate code. So again, th. Now we have v4, let's say header in, we now have this header group dot headers. Our key is going to be header ID. So let's add that header.id. And we can grab what we have in here for each th. So let's grab the scope, and let's also grab our classes. So let's paste that in here as well. Okay, save that. And let me just go back to the browser to see what we have. Okay, our headers are not showing yet. That's because we have to add one more thing here within our th, and that's called a flex render. So let's just add that. So again, in between our th, this is what's going to be rendered for each th item. It's called a flexed render. Again, this is a bit cumbersome, but once you have it set up, it's really easy to add interactivity and functionality to our table. So render equals header.column.column_def.header. And we need a props property here. And this is header.getContext. Okay, we can close this out. Let's save that. And hopefully now our headers are showing in our table, and they are. Okay, now let's work on our actual table data. So let's get rid of what we have in here. So we can keep our t-body, but let's get rid of everything in here. Actually, let me just comment out all of this so we can reference it. But we'll make a new one here. Okay. Let's close that out. Okay, and we have to do the same thing we did for our table head. So loop through our TRs, loop through our TDs, and then add a flex render. So start with the TR v4 equals So now we're looping over rows in table.getRow model.rows. And our key is going to be row ID. Okay, let's close that out. And then within our table row, we have our table, or our TD at least. And again, we have to loop over this. So v4 equals cell in row dot get visible cells. Okay, and the key is going to be cell.id. Sorry, forgot my quote, or the end quote here. Okay, let's close that out. And let's add the class that we have on our TD here. There's no class for the TR, so that's fine. Let's paste in this class for our TD after here. Okay. And now to actually render our data, we have to use that flex render again within our TD. So right here, say flex render. Render equals cell.column.column_def.cell. Okay. And again, we need props here equals cell.getContext. Okay. And we can close that out. And hopefully I did everything correctly. Let's save that. Again, a lot of code here just to render our table like we have it before, but you'll start to see the usefulness of this in a second. And we have an issue here. Looks like I spelled props wrong. Props. Okay. Let's refresh. And now we do get our data. So yeah, a bit of work just to get this rendering how we have it before, but now we can start adding functionality to our table. So we are missing the edit button we had here before, but I'll add that back in a second. So again, a little bit of work here to get our table body and our table head rendering like we have before. But now, say we wanted to add another column here. For example, I'm not showing the ID for our people, but we can add that in easily if we just add ID within our columns here. So let me just duplicate this. Let's say ID, which is the accessor key in our JSON right here. And let's just say ID here. Okay. So if I save that, the ID is right there. Let me show you a few other things here. Say, for example, we wanted to combine first name and last name into its own column called name. Let me show you how we can do that. You can do this from the back end as well, but since we already have this information in our front end, we can do it here as well. So after the last name, let's create a new one here. And instead of an accessor key, we can use an accessor function. And this is a callback. We can take in the row as a param. And we can say row first name, first underscore name. So we're accessing it by the accessor key. And pretty much the same for our last name. So let me just copy that, say last name. And we also have our header like before, and this is just going to be name. Okay. Save that, go back to our table, and there is the name combined with these two rows here. So I'm going to take that out because our table is starting to get cut off here. But that's how you would combine two rows, or sorry, two columns. So let me just comment this out. Now, if you take a look at the created column, it's sort of just dumping out what we have in our JSON. So this is the date format. That's just coming from our JSON right here. But we want to format that using some sort of date library. So let me show you how we can do that. So for our created at accessor, we can add another key here. Let's say cell. And this takes a callback as well. We can say info. And to get the actual value that's already there, we can say info.getValue as a method. And for now, let's just concatenate a string here. So hi. So let me save that, go back to our table, and you can see that string added to the end there. So now we can just make use of a date library, which I will do to format our date. So let me just duplicate this. Let me comment this out, or let me just delete it. I'm going to use date FNS here. So let me format this. I'll import it in a second. Let me just say format. The first param is a new date instance. We're passing in the actual value. Okay. And the second param is the format as a string. So month, day, and year is what I have here. we have to import datefns, which I haven't installed yet, but let's import it up here. Import format from datefns. Okay, let's save that. And now we can actually install it. So I have it here in another tab. Let's see, npm install. Okay, let's grab this. Let's go back here. Let's stop this. Let's install it. Okay, npm run dev. And hopefully that should work. So back here, let's refresh. And now our date is formatted correctly using datefns. Okay, now let's re-add our edit button, which is in our last column here. So we do have a definition for that in our columns, but it's not showing because there's no data right here. So if I were to say edit here, that should show. And there it is. But I do want it to be blank, so we'll leave it as blank. But we can do something similar to this to render the edit button. So let me paste that in here. Let's get rid of this. And it should say edit for now. Hopefully that should show. And it does. But we need this to be a link, or in our case, we'll just make it an anchor tag. So how can we do that? In React, it's pretty straightforward. We can just return some JSX here, and that will get rendered out. And you can use JSX within Vue as well, but I don't have that set up. So what I want to do is make use of single file components and reference that in here instead of using JSX. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's make a new component named edit button.view. Add a template. And this is where our element will go for our edit button. So again, you can have any HTML in here. We also need a script setup. So let me add that as well. Script setup. And let's add some markup in here. And for now, let's just hard code a few things. Hi, there. Okay. Just so you can see that it's rendering out some markup here. So save that back to our table. And I'm going to make use of Vue's render method, which is called h, to make use of this single file component. I'm going to use curly braces here. And we'll make use of h. Again, this is Vue's render method. And the param is the single file component we want to use. So edit button. Not sure why my autocomplete isn't working, so we have to import this manually. And we also need to import h from Vue. So h from Vue. And we also need that component. So import edit button from at components edit button.view. Okay. So hopefully I did this right. Let's save that and let's see if that renders. And nothing is showing here. What's going on? So we don't need this info. Let me change it to just brackets. Does that work? Nope. So yeah, I forgot to return it here. So if we say return the render function, that should work. So save that. And you can see it rendering here. Actually, we can just put it on one line. So if I just remove this, remove the return, put this here, and hopefully that should work. So we want that edit button to go to /edit/id. So let's go ahead and do that. So we have to pass in some props here. So we can do that as the second param. But we also need to grab the ID. So we can grab that from here, from the row. So we can destructure row from here. And we can pass that in here. So as a prop to edit button, let's pass in the ID. And that's going to be row.original.id. And sorry, this should be an object. So let's do that. And hopefully Prettier should clean this up. Now we need to accept that prop within our edit button. So right here, let's accept that prop. So const props equals define props. And that should be the ID. And we'll just accept it as a number. Okay. And now we can style this accordingly. So this should be an anchor tag. The link will go to, how about we make it a template string? Say users / the ID coming in / edit. And let's style it a bit. So class equals, say text indigo 600, hover text indigo 500. And let's say edit here. Okay. And hopefully that should work. And there is the edit button. And the ID is correct. And I was just adding this when I was debugging. Let me just remove that. So I was just testing out why the edit button wasn't showing. So that should be somewhere in here. Right here. Let me just remove that. Okay. Okay, now finally we can start adding some functionality here. So let's start with pagination. So right now we're just showing all of the records here. I believe there are 100. So let's add some pagination. So this is where you'll start seeing the benefit when we start adding this functionality. So within our Tanstack table here, let's import something else here for pagination. It's called get pagination row model. Okay, save that. And down here, let me just remove this. In our table instance, we can say get pagination row model, get pagination row model as a method. Okay. And now if I save that, go back to the browser, you'll see it's only showing 10 records here because the default pagination is 10. And I'll show you how to change that in a second. But for now, let's add our buttons for previous and next page and also first and last page. So back to our code, let's put it down here somewhere. So how about after this div here, let's see if this is a good spot. Let's just say buttons, and that's decent. So let's add some classes here. Let's say space x4, and let's give it some margin on the top. And let's make a few buttons here. So let's say button, let's give it a class as well. Just a basic button so it looks decent. Let's make it rounded. Let's make it px2 and py2. We also need a disabled state, so let's add that as well. Disabled, opacity 50. And how about disabled cursor not allowed? Okay, so let's start with first and last page. So first page, and let's duplicate this, and let's say last page. So last page, okay. See how that looks? Okay. And to add the actual functionality, we can put a click handler on these. So click for the first page. We can say table.set page index, and it's 0 based, so 0. And we can do the same for last page. So right here. So this is going to be table.get page count -1 for the last one. Okay. Save that, and let's see if it works. So first page, we're currently on the first page. Let's try last page. And it shows the last page here. First page works as well. Awesome. Let's add next and previous pages. So let me just duplicate this one. Okay. Let's say previous page. And also next page. Okay. And for the click handler for previous page, pretty straightforward. It's just table.previouspage as a method. And same thing for next page, but next page. Next page. Let's try that out. Save. So we're on the first page. Next page works all the way up to the end, and previous page works as well. But we also want to disable this if we can't go back to the previous page, and same for next page. That's why I added those disabled styles. So for previous page, let's say disabled when we cannot get the previous page. So table dot, it's kind of a weird name here. It's called get can previous page. So disable it when we can't get the previous page, and pretty much the same for next page. Get can next page. Sorry, get can next page. So when we can't go to the next page, disable it. And we do have those styles, so hopefully this works. Okay, it's disabled. And it should be disabled when we go to the last page, and it is. And again, the beauty of Headless UI is we have complete control over where we put the pagination. So if we wanted it on the right, we can easily do that. If we wanted it on top of the table as well, we can do that as well. So let's grab this. Let's put it on top of the table. So somewhere here. And let's paste that in, and that should work as well. There we go. First page, last page, previous page, and so on. And it's on the top and bottom of the table. Let me just remove that. Don't want that here, but you can put it there if you like. Let's add some information about the current page we're on. So page 1 of 10, for example, and also the number of results. So let's add that above our buttons. So down here, let's add another section here for that pagination info. So say MT8. So for example, page 1 of 10. And how about we say 100 results? See if that looks decent. Okay, let's make that work. So let's actually start with the page count. So this will be table.get page count, pretty straightforward. And that should be 10. Okay, let's fix this one. This one will be table.get state, getting the state of the pagination. It's the page index. Remember, it's 0 base, so we have to add 1. See if this works. So we're currently on page 6, page 1, page 10, or sorry, page 2, and last page should be page 10, and it does work. And for this, right now it's always going to be 100, but when we add filtering, this should update as well. And for that, let's say table.get filtered row model .rows.length. Okay. And like I said, that should be 100 for now, but that will update when we do filtering. Now let me show you how we can change the pagination size. So if you want to change it initially, we can add some state on our table instance. So table, where's our table? Const table. Okay, right here, we can say initial state, pagination as an object, and we can say page size, default is 10, like we have it, let's say 5. So now that should be 5 by default. You can see now we have 20 pages, and all of this should still work, and it does. Cool. Now you can do that programmatically as well. Let me just change that back to 10. Actually, I'll just comment it out, since 10 is the default. Okay. And let's go back to our buttons here. And let me show you how to do it programmatically. So again, we'll add another div here, MT8. And let me just grab one of these buttons here. Grab this one, paste that one in. Let's remove the click handler for now. And let's say page size 5. Let's make a few of these. Page size 10. And how about one more for 20? Duplicate 20. Okay. Let's see how that looks. Okay. Let's put some space in between them. Doesn't really matter. Space X4. Okay. So pretty straightforward. Let's just add a click handler. Click equals table dot set page size. And in this case, it's 5. Do the same for 10. And also 20. Okay. Save that. Let's make sure that works. So right now it's 10 by default. Page size 5. Okay. Page size 10. Okay. And page size 20. Awesome. So it does work. So yeah, that's pagination. We have a bunch of properties and methods we can make use of, so we can build our pagination however we like. So for example, if you wanted numbered pagination, you can build that out yourself as well. Okay, now let's move on to sorting. So we want to be able to click the columns and have them sort either ascending or descending. So let's go ahead and work on that. So we need to import from our table here. So it's get sorted row model. And within our table instance down here, we can say get sorted row model, get sorted row model as a method like we've been doing. And we also need a few more things to set this up. So we need a state object right here. Actually, before we do that, we need a reactive piece of state that holds the information of what column is being sorted. So let's add that. Let's put it right here. Doesn't matter. Let's say sorting, const sorting equals, let's make it a ref. and it's defaulted to an empty array. So nothing's being sorted. And now within our state here, so initially I thought you could pass it in like this, but this does not work. Sorting.value. Similar to how we have our data up here. But like I said, this doesn't work. You have to make this a getter. I guess it expects some sort of sorting field. So we have to say get sorting as a method. And then we have to return sorting.value. Okay, so that should work. We need a few more things here. We need a event listener. So whenever the sorting is changed, we have to call some sort of updater. And we can put that right here. Let me just scroll up a bit. It's called on sorting change. And again, this is a callback. And in the example, they have it set up like this. So updater or value. And it checks if it's a method. So if you pass in a method, then it calls the method. But if it doesn't, then it just updates our piece of state. So again, sorting.value. So we're going to check if it's a function. So type of updater or value equals a function. If it's a function, then call it. So updater or value. And then we'll pass in sorting.value. But if not, then just update with whatever's coming in. So updater or value. Okay. Let me save that. And we need one more thing here. So if we go back to the browser, sorting doesn't work yet. And that's because we have to add a click handler on the table headings. So let's go to our th right here. And we want this to be clickable and sortable. So we have to add a click handler here. So click equals, let's say header.column.get toggle sorting handler. Okay. And we have to pass in the event. So we can say question mark dot event. Again, I just grabbed this from the example they have. Okay. And hopefully now this should sort. There's no icons yet, but we'll add that in a second. Let's see if this works when we click it. And it doesn't. Looks like I have a typo on my on sorting change. This should be in uppercase V. Okay, let's save that. And now hopefully sorting should work. So if I click first name, it does sort ascending. If I click it again, it sorts descending. And if I click it one more time, it should go back to default. Okay, let's add some icons here. So let's go back to our sorting th. So up here, actually, we can get rid of this now. And also our t-body. Okay, so right here, right after our flex render for our th, let's just say hi here. You can see it renders there. So we can add our icons in here. So to do that, we provide an object with ascending. We give it the icon in here. Let's say up for now, and we'll change that to an arrow in a second. Same for descending. We actually don't need the quotes around this. Same for descending here. Let's say down. And we have to add some array syntax here. So header.column.get is sorted. And this will make sure it displays the correct icon. Okay. So again, let's click this. We get up, down, and nothing. Cool. So I tried to add some SVG icons in here. I tried using the render method like I did above when we had a custom cell, but that doesn't seem to work. So we're limited to either emojis. So you can choose any emoji here, say up arrow or down arrow, and that would work. Or you can make use of any valid ASCII character. So I have a web page here. I'm just going to grab these arrows here. So let me just copy this. You can paste that in. And same for down. Okay. So that should work. Back to our app. And there are the arrows. Cool. We also want to change the pointer on this to indicate it's a button. So we can do that over here. Let's use Vue's conditional class rendering. let's say class equals an object, and we'll add cursor pointer and also select none, so we can't select the text. And we'll add that if we can sort the column. So header dot column dot get can sort. Okay. So now it should be a cursor pointer if we can sort it, and it is. Cool. We can also disable sorting on certain columns if you don't want that. For example, for ID, and also for this last column, we don't want that to be sortable. So that should be simple enough. For our ID, we can say enable sorting, and we can say false. Okay. Same for our last column here. And now you can see it's not sortable. These ones still are, and this one is not. Cool. Let's double check created sorts correctly by date. That looks correct. Same with this direction and back to default. And these are just strings, so that should sort correctly, and it does. Cool. And I haven't taken a look at this, but you can pass custom sort functions as well if you need custom sorting. Okay, now let's move on to filtering. So we want an input here, and as we type, we want to search the data here and have the table update accordingly. Let's go ahead and do that. Again, let's import that from our Vue table. It's called get filtered row model. Let's grab this. Let's go back to our table instance. So right here, same thing, get filtered row model. Get filtered row model as a method. We need something similar to our sorting here. We can say get global filter. So let's do that. Get global filter. And we need a piece of state for that as well. And we'll name it filter. Okay. So let's add that. Duplicate this. Let's call it filter. Default is an empty string. And now all we need to do is add an input type text with a V model of filter on it. So let's add that somewhere above our table. So how about right here? Is this a good spot? Let's see. Filter goes here. Let's put it below. Okay. So let's add some margin here, my4, and let's add our input in here. So input type text. Give it some classes here so it looks decent. Border gray 400, rounded px2 and py2. Let's put a placeholder on it. Placeholder equals search or filter. And let's put our V model on this. So V model equals filter. Okay, let's save that. And let's see if this works. There's our input. How come my placeholder is not showing? Because I spelled it wrong, of course. Okay. And let's search for someone on the second page. How about this person here? And it does seem to work. Cool. Let's just type in a few other things here to make sure it works. Crawl. And everything is working. Cool. Let's search for a role instead. So architect. There we go. Cool. And it was pretty easy to add that, so now I hope you can see the benefit of making use of a package like this. And again, you're free to put this filter wherever you like. If you want it here, you can put it here on the right. You can put it underneath. It's totally up to you because we have this headless component. Okay, one final thing I want to show you is the reusability of this component. So say, for example, we had another set of data that's totally unrelated to these people here. And again, I have some mock data prepared here. It's called mock data cars. And this is completely unrelated to people. It's just a bunch of car makes, their year, and their price. So if we just make a few changes to our Tanstack table here, we can make this component pretty flexible. So what we need to do is accept the data and also the columns as a prop, and we can pass that in from the parent component, making this component very reusable for any type of data. So let me show you what I mean. Let's accept the people from our parent component. So say const props equals define props. Okay. People, or in this case, Let's make it more generic. Let's just call it data. And that should be an array. And we also want to accept our columns from the outside. And that should be an array as well. And when we do it this way, we can reuse this component with any data we want. So let's go ahead and make these changes. We are no longer importing people from within here. So let's cut this out. Let's go to our parent component, so app view. Let's import it here. And let's pass it in to our table here. So data equals people. Okay, let's save this. Let's save this as well. We need to update our ref here to make use of props.data. Okay, and hopefully our table should still work at this point. And it seems like it does. Let's sort. That still works. Okay. Okay, cool. So it still works. Let's do the same for our columns. So we're going to move this to the parent component. So let me grab all of this. Let's cut that out. Let's put that in app view. Let's paste that in here. And we also need a bunch of imports. And we also have to update our columns here. And this doesn't have to be reactive, so we can just grab it from the props.columns. Okay. And let's grab our imports from here. So let's just grab everything here. Paste it into our app. Let's put it here. We don't need ref in here. Okay, let's save this. We no longer need these imports in here, so let's get rid of them. Okay. And let's pass in our columns from app view. So we have columns people. Let's pass that into our Tanstack table as our columns prop. Columns equals columns people. And hopefully I did everything correctly and our table should still work. Let's refresh. Looks like it still works. Awesome. But now let me show you how reusable this component is. So now since we're passing everything from our parent component, we can grab any other set of data and just reuse this table we have. So let's import cars from our mock data cars JSON. Okay. We need to do the same thing here for our cars. So let me just grab this for our columns. Let's paste that in here. Let's say columns, cars. And let's see what we have for our cars. We do have an ID. We have car make, car model, car year, and price. So let's do that quickly. Car make, car model, car model. Let's get rid of this. Car year. Let's just say year for this one. And the last one was price. And of course, you can format this however you like, but I'm just going to dump out whatever is in the JSON. Okay. Was it car price or just price? It's just price. Okay. And we don't need the rest of them. So let's get rid of all of these. We now have our columns for our cars, and we can make use of this component. So it should have all of the functionality that we built out, but now it's using a completely different set of data. So let's just put that within my8. Let's paste that in. Our data is now cars. And our columns is columns, cars. Did I import cars correctly? I did. Okay, so now let me save that. Here is our people, but down here we have our cars. Again, we have the same functionality, but a totally different set of data. So again, this is sortable. I pasted in the ID, so the ID is not sortable. But this is sortable, this is sortable. We have our price, which is sortable as well. We have our pagination. Let's set it to 5. Oh yeah, and I forgot to show you the results as we type here. So if I were to search BMW, you can see that does work and the results do update. And of course, our pagination works as well. So let me just remove this. Next page. And we have a very reusable component here using Tanstack Table. So yeah, I hope you can see the benefit of using Tanstack Table, along with the benefits of it being a headless component, so you can style it however you like. One thing to note here is this is client-side, so if you have a large set of data, then your initial load time may take some time. And if your data set is large enough, then it would take up too much memory. So in that case, you want to combine this with some sort of server so you don't run into memory issues. And I plan to do videos of this using Laravel in both Livewire and Inertia. But if you're okay with doing everything client-side, be sure to check out Tanstack Table using Vue.js.